You are on tips and streams with your host, Coca.
What's up, everyone? Koken here, coming to you from the cold outdoors. Fresh air, freezing breeze, and 4 NBA matchups ready to break down. Let's jump right in. The first prediction for today's NBA games is for the game between the Cleveland Cavaliers and Toronto Raptors. We have the Cavaliers rolling into Toronto, and for me this is one of those classic schedule and matchup spots where I want to be on the home side. Both teams are coming in on the second night of a back-to-back, but the Raptors get to sleep in their own beds, stay in their own routine, and keep this hot streak going in front of their crowd, while Cleveland has to get on a plane after a physical game and cross the border. That matters over 48 minutes. When I look at Toronto right now, I see a team that has finally clicked under Darko Rajakovic. I remember those early games when he kept preaching patience, talking about chemistry, ball movement, and trust. Now you can see all of that paying off. The Raptors have turned into a genuine offensive machine, sitting near the top of the league in scoring, moving the ball side to side, and punishing defenses with spacing and pace. They are one of the best teams in the league in assists and fast break points, which tells me two things. First, they share the ball. Second, they run right at your legs on nights like this when fatigue creeps in. Brandon Ingram gives them a go-to scorer who can get to his spots in the mid-range and finish at the rim. Scotty Barnes is doing a bit of everything, stuffing the defensive categories while still giving efficient offense. Emmanuel quickly keeps the offense organized and pushes the tempo, and even with question marks around R.J. Barrett or Jakob Poeltl, the Raptors have shown they can plug in players and keep the system humming. The key for me is how clean their shot profile has become. High field goal percentage, strong three-point percentage, and a lot of easy points in transition. That is exactly what you want against a Cleveland team that can be slow to get matched up in space. Now, I respect what the Cavaliers bring to the table. Donovan Mitchell is playing like a superstar, putting up big scoring nights and carrying a massive load as both scorer and secondary playmaker. Evan Mobley anchors the paint, protects the rim, and gives them a strong presence in the interior. DeAndre Hunter and the rest of that supporting cast can absolutely hurt you when they get rolling. Cleveland is still a powerful group with a top 10 offense and a defense that, on a good night, can choke off your first option. But here is where I start to lean hard toward Toronto. Cleveland loves to bomb away from deep, and they take a huge number of three-point shots. At the same time, their defense on the perimeter has been leaky, allowing opponents to knock down a high percentage from outside. That is a dangerous combination against a Raptors team that is confident, shooting the ball well, and already sitting at the top of the league in second-half scoring and fast break production. Over 2 meetings this season, Toronto has already handled the Cavaliers twice, and neither game really went down to the wire. There is a psychological edge there, especially when the roles flip and the Raptors get them at home. Situationally, I also do not love this spot for Cleveland. They have relied a lot on Mitchell playing at an extremely high level, and when the legs get heavy on a road back-to-back, jump shots tend to flatten out. Toronto, on the other hand, can attack this game with depth, ball movement, and energy plays from guys like Barnes and their role players. If the Raptors get out in transition, move the ball, and keep the crowd involved, they can put constant pressure on the Cavaliers over all 4 quarters. So, when I put everything together, this is how I see it. Toronto is one of the hottest teams in the league. They are playing their best basketball of the season. They are at home, and they already have the blueprint for beating this Cleveland group. The Cavaliers are dangerous, and they definitely have the higher ceiling on paper, but in this particular spot, I trust the form, the rhythm, and the gem. My prediction is simple. I am riding with the Raptors on their home floor to stay hot and take care of business. I am playing Toronto to cover the 1.5-point spread against the Cavaliers, and I would not be surprised at all if they win this one with a little bit of breathing room by the final buzzer. That's where my money is tonight. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Portland Trail Blazers and Milwaukee Bucks. When I look at this matchup, I see 2 teams searching for rhythm, confidence, and any sort of momentum. And honestly, when both squads come in bruised up like this, that's when I really start digging into how they react under pressure, how they travel, how they respond after losing nights, and who still brings the fight even with half the roster taped up. Portland has been living in chaos for weeks, but one thing about this group is that they don't fold. I've been watching them closely, and even in their ugly nights, they keep pushing the pace, They battle on the glass, and they find production from places you don't expect. The injuries have piled up, and it's forced guys like Denny Avdija and Donovan Clingan into roles they probably weren't supposed to carry this early. But that's the thing. These guys have responded. Avdija has been playing with the mindset of a lead scorer, attacking early, powering through contact, and staying locked in as a playmaker. Clingan has been something else on the boards, giving them extra possessions when the offense stalls. And when Jeremy Grant settles in and actually gets good looks, he gives Portland that veteran punch they desperately need. Now, the Trailblazers are coming off a tough back-to-back stretch, and that usually scares bettors away. But with this particular roster, I've noticed the opposite. They tend to play freer, faster, and a little looser in these situations. They've actually been one of the better teams in the league at covering on the second night of a back-to-back because they crash the offensive glass harder and hunt early offense before their legs get heavy. That matters tonight. Milwaukee, on the other hand, is in survival mode without their superstar. When a team built entirely around one dominant force suddenly loses that anchor, everything else gets shaky. I've said it before, without their centerpiece, the Bucks simply do not generate the same interior pressure, and their half-court offense becomes incredibly predictable. Yes, Ryan Rollins has been a revelation, stepping into a bigger role and proving he can run a team. Yes, Miles Turner and Bobby Portis can give them scoring pops, but I keep coming back to the same problem. This team doesn't defend well enough without their leader, and they don't rebound well enough to cover their mistakes. Even when they shoot the ball well, they give just as much back on the other end. And that's where this matchup turns for me. Portland plays faster, they crash harder, and they generate more second-chance looks than almost anybody right now. When I picture how this game unfolds, I see Milwaukee hitting stretches of good offense, but I also see them getting punished on the glass and giving up too many easy runouts. Portland may not shoot lights out, but they're going to take more shots than Milwaukee, and in a tight game, that alone can tilt the spread. And here's the part that seals it for me. Milwaukee has dropped too many games recently where they simply couldn't match another team's energy for 4 full quarters. Portland, especially in these spots, shows up with nothing to lose. They play hungry. So after looking at everything, the absences, the matchup dynamics, the pace, the rebounding battle, and the way these two teams have looked under pressure, I'm riding with the side that has shown more fight, more grit, and more willingness to scrap for every possession. My money is on the Trailblazers to cover the 2.5-point spread tonight. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Houston Rockets and Phoenix Suns. When I look at this matchup, I see two teams playing high-level basketball, but I also see two very different rhythms coming into the night. Phoenix has been grinding through a heavy schedule, and with this being the second leg of a back-to-back, I can already feel the fatigue sitting on their shoulders. Meanwhile, Houston rolls into town rested, sharper, and honestly, with a point to prove after dropping a tight one to Denver. I've been following this Rockets group closely, and I like the personality they've built under pressure. Even without key pieces, they've been putting up numbers with a calm, confident offensive engine powered by ball movement and inside-out balance. Alperen Sengun is the hub, Amen Thompson is getting more comfortable each game, and Reed Shepherd just gave them one of those performances that make you raise your eyebrows and say, "All right, kid, you're for real." What stands out to me most is the way Houston controls the glass and dictates pace on their terms. They don't rush. They don't panic. They play like a team that trusts its spacing and trusts its reads. When you combine that with how aggressively they crash the offensive boards, you walk into every possession knowing Houston has a shot to squeeze out extra points. Phoenix, on the other hand, has been playing above expectations all month. Credit to them. They've reinvented themselves after shaking up the roster, and they're getting big nights from Devin Booker and Dillon Brooks. Their defensive activity has been excellent too, especially in passing lanes, and their confidence at home is undeniable. But here's the thing, I don't love this spot for them. Not tonight. They just burned a ton of energy last night, and while they can still hoop with anyone, the turnaround is brutal. When a team plays with this much pressure on the perimeter and relies this heavily on shot making from their top scorers, tired legs become a real factor. You can hide fatigue on offense sometimes, but you can't hide it on defense, especially against a unit like Houston that forces you to rotate, bump cutters, and defend multiple actions in the same possession. Another angle I can't ignore is how often Phoenix has struggled historically against winning Rockets teams. Houston has walked into this building and punched first way too many times for it to be accidental. Some matchups just tilt a certain way, and this is one of them. The Rockets' physicality inside and their ability to string together quick scoring bursts tend to bother Phoenix. And with the Rockets coming in off a loss, that's when they play some of their best basketball. I've noticed that this group responds with sharper execution and better focus after they get clipped. It's a pride thing with them, and I like that. So when I look at the rest advantage, the matchup trends, the rebounding edge, and the overall energy profile of both teams, the picture becomes pretty clear to me. Houston has the legs, the depth, the pace control, and the interior presence to take over this matchup when it matters. My prediction: I'm riding with the Houston Rockets to win this game and cover the 5-point spread. I believe the matchup favors them, the spot favors them, and the energy swing absolutely favors them. I'm in Houston to get it done. Today's last prediction is for the game between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings. When I sit down to break down a matchup like this, I always start by asking myself one simple question: which team is actually built to handle the moment? And when I look at Minnesota rolling into Sacramento tonight, I see a group that knows exactly who they are, how they want to play, and how to impose that identity on teams that don't bring the same level of discipline. That's been the theme all season for me when I've watched the Timberwolves. They don't need every possession to be perfect, but they know how to stack advantages until the game bends their way. And honestly, I can't say the same thing about Sacramento. Every time I flip on a Kings game this year, I find myself saying the same thing. This roster should be better, but the execution just isn't there. And the cracks in their foundation show up early: slow rotations, missed box outs, hesitation in big spots. They finally snapped that brutal losing streak with an emotional win in Denver. Credit where it's due. But one upset doesn't suddenly erase the structural issues that have been sinking them for weeks. Meanwhile, Minnesota walks in here carrying both frustration and focus after that tough collapse against the Suns. When you blow a late lead the way they did, competitors like Edwards, Randall, Gobert, those guys don't shrug that off. They come into the next game with an edge. I've covered this league long enough to recognize when a locker room responds with urgency, and everything about Minnesota right now tells me they're looking to get right immediately, not let that loss linger. What gives them the upper hand tonight is the balance they're playing with. Edwards is in full superstar mode, not just hunting shots, but reading defenses, punishing mismatches, and keeping the game under his control. Randall gives them a second steadying presence who can create offense when possessions bog down. And when Gobert anchors the back line, Minnesota doesn't need to gamble. They funnel drivers directly into length and physicality. Sacramento, on the other hand, is walking into this matchup without Sabonis, and that's a huge problem when dealing with Minnesota's interior. Without his presence on the glass, the Kings already struggle to finish defensive possessions, and against the Wolves team that attacks the boards with real purpose, that weakness becomes a flashing red light. Westbrook, Levine, DeRozan, Schroeder, these guys can give them scoring spurts, but without Sabonis cleaning up misses and initiating quick outlets, the Kings' offense loses rhythm. And defensively, well, the Kings simply haven't shown the ability to string together stops. Their rotations are late, they surrender too many quality looks, and their opponents consistently shoot extremely well against them. That's not the profile you want when Edwards is coming off a 40-point night and Randall is in a groove. On the YouTube side of things, my Tips and Streams family knows how I handicap games like this. I'm not chasing the emotional high of Sacramento's upset win. I'm watching the matchup, the trends, and the mentality of both teams. Minnesota has won both meetings this season, and each time, they look like the grown-ups in the room, dictating pace and forcing Sacramento to react. Tonight feels like more of the same. My prediction: I'm riding with Minnesota. I'm taking the Timberwolves to win this game and cover the 8-point spread. I trust their firepower, their defense, and their mindset, and I expect them to walk into Sacramento, take control early, and never give the Kings real breathing room.